Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's Mindfulness with Mark Bianchi. This week we are going to be talking about, going to actually go very in depth about what is meant by mindfulness with our money. And also, you can't talk about that without realizing how important it is to try to recapture our power that we have over money, over the stability and security in our lives. We are the ones that are in control. So I wanted to start it out by just getting back to some real basics and just starting from the beginning. This is kind of like a money mindfulness 101. Um, from the very beginning, I thought that this topic was excellent for the Enlightened World Network and the Enlightened Living channels because it ties in so much, being one of those things in our lives that really can either add to our personal power, to our centeredness, to our peace of mind, or it can really detract from it. And the way it detracts from it is by feeling like we don't have control, like anything else in our lives. And while we can't control every aspect of our lives, what we certainly can do is we can put measures in place to try to maintain and capture as much of that personal power as possible. So I wanted to go over with what I call my personal 11 commandments, not 10. I don't want to plagiarize God. But my personal 11 commandments about how to be mindful of money. And the number one thing I would say is to realize that we are in charge of our own money and our own destinies with money. Nobody else is. So it means that every decision you make, every behavior you have, every attitude that you have about money, every perception that has been created throughout your life, whether that be through relationships with friends, relationships with your parents, what you observed with your parents and their behavior with their money. That was all formed and has is in your psyche now and requires you owning that. And you have to realize that at the end of the day, you are the one that is in charge of that. The number two commandment is realizing that things, okay, there's money and there's things. Things usually only bring us temporary satisfaction. They are not a panacea for our lives. A lot of times it's like reaching for the gallon of ice cream when you're feeling emotional about something. Sometimes it's seeing it for what it is. Um, the things are they only offer so much depth and add so much depth to our lives. So they're only going to satisfy so much for us. Um, so if in terms of things and money, money is obviously a tool to have those things, but realizing that your personal power in as far as your future security and your future stability is much more about the money that you have as far as from a physical and tangible sense. Now, I'm not talking about, the other elements that add to the happiness of our lives that are obviously much more important than money. And realizing that it only has so much capability. But realizing that those things that we reach for, think of them like they are like that gallon of ice cream. They are satisfying an urge, or it's trying to squash something. And it's like it's not about what we're eating, it's about what's eating us. And oftentimes that's that coping mechanism. It can be a coping mechanism, much like the gallon of ice cream could be. and when you don't even bother to put it in a dish or whatever, that, hey, you're dealing with something. So you want to be cognizant of not using it to just fill a temporary void or use it as a coping mechanism, but this all comes into light as seeing it exactly for what it is. And then the commandment number 3, not giving it any more power than it has. Money is what it is, and it's a means to, I would say, to having some sort of a financial, a freedom, depending on how you manage it. That's all it really is. It's nothing more, it's nothing less. It is a tool used for commodities, for goods and services. But its real power is only the power that you give it. And that's where the mindfulness comes in, is realizing that it's only this tangible item. It's necessary, and a lot of times I'll say to myself, it's a necessary evil almost. But I really always try to steer myself away from that, because I really kind of think it's a misnomer to associate money with evil. I think that's where a lot of the stigma comes in about it. And I think that's why a lot of people have problems really dealing personally in a healthy relationship with their money, is because they've always grown up thinking, having this stigma attached to money. It's like this taboo subject. You don't talk about it. It's one of those things you brush under the rug, So it's realizing that, it only brings temporary satisfaction, of course, but also, though, along with that is not giving it any more power than what it has. We all have that temptation to, to think about status. We're bombarded with that on TV, on Netflix, whatever we watch. We see people living the life that we long to live. And we wonder, don't we deserve that? Yeah, we all deserve the wonderful good things in life. But sometimes those old sayings really are the truest sayings, and the best things in life really are free, and they can't be bought with money. So it's about putting your hat on to think of money in its proper perspective, and keeping it there, and not letting those outside forces change your healthy perception that you should have and strive to have about money. So my 4th commandment is realizing that building your money will offer you more freedom in the long run than anything will. And what I mean by that is waking up one day after 35 years of being prudent with your money, talking to the right advisors, doing your research, doing your homework, talking to those certified financial planners and advisors when you're ready to actually come up with an investment strategy. What I mean by that commandment is that no thing that you're going to buy today, no vacation that you're going to buy today is going to feel as good as one day being able to say, wow, look at this nest egg that I've created. I can go where I want. I can do what I want. You may not be able to live the high life, but that's not a necessity. A lot of us can find material comfort and security and stability in our lives without having every single luxury at our avail. You read all kinds of things about you need $2 million to retire today. You need $5 million to retire today. Every article that you read, it's a new dollar amount that's put out there that you just cannot retire unless you hit this dollar amount. And, I think that I take a little personal issue with that, because while, yeah, of course, the more you have put away, obviously the better that would be. But so much of that has to do with what you consider your necessities in life and your balancing of your needs and your wants. So what exactly does it take for you to comfortably retire? There are people, I have met people who have retired with, you know, very little in contrast to the amounts I just mentioned. And there's people who couldn't imagine retiring with less than $2 or $3 million. So it's all about you know, what you consider important in your life. But don't let anybody ever tell you that you would not be able to retire unless you hit an arbitrary figure out there. Think of the figure you need. Discuss that figure with your financial advisor, your certified financial advisor and planner, and come up with what that number is for you. That's not something you would talk to somebody like me about. I'm the kind of person, the financial coach, who you would talk about getting to the point where you're ready to start talking to a financial advisor or a planner. I'm about helping you put money in perspective. I'm sort of like your financial therapist type of a person. That's kind of what a financial coach is. They talk to you and they put you on a plan, much like you would go to a fitness coach who would help you, personal trainer, fitness coach, whatever you want to call them, would help you understand your relationship that you have with food and exercise. What a financial coach does is they help you understand your behaviors that are behind your choices that you're making in managing your income and your expenses. And, why, for instance, are you making $100,000 a year, but you're spending repeatedly, you're spending $125,000 a year? Those are the kind of things that a financial coach would work with. And you want to get to a point where you have that in control before you go any further and then go to an advisor or a planner. You want to be able to come up with your own personal budget that works for your future goals and where you see yourself in 20, 30, 40 years, depending on your age. So that brings me to the next commandment, which is, what is mindful money discipline? It is about being disciplined in your approach to managing it. And I just touched on that a little bit. It's about realizing that budgeting is okay. It's about, being cognizant of what is your income today? What could your income be 5 years from now? What could your income be 10 or 15 years from now? It's being cognizant and having that discipline to know that your expenses shouldn't be controlling you. You should be controlling your expenses. Just by the same token, you should be controlling your income. And we don't always feel like we have complete control of our income, but we have more control than we actually think we do of our income, because, we can always uptrain ourselves. We can always build our own personal resumes. It's not always easy to fit that in, but, that's one of the ways, when I hear like, oh, I can't control my income, my boss does that for me. But you also have the ability to show your boss, to show future bosses, future companies, newly acquired skill sets, whether that be self-trained online or going to a career coach and plotting out a career strategy. You can also do that yourself. It's about making yourself marketable. That's all part of the discipline, to realize that you are the one that's controlling what's that, to a large extent. Okay, not 100%. There's so few things in life that we have 100% control over, because there can always be variables that come into our lives and change that for us. But to a large extent, we do control our income. We do control our expenses. So have the discipline to know where it's all going, and have a strategy for yourself. Have a budgeting plan for yourself. It's also about creating a nest egg or an emergency fund a priority. So prioritizing is huge when it comes to this. Um, you know, that nest egg, that emergency fund, whatever you want to call it, um, that should be a number one priority. It's not always easy, but making that front and center, once you start to make that a priority, that's going to play in to all of the other decisions that you make. So make that nest egg or that emergency fund a bigger priority in your life, and you will see things going in the right direction. So becoming in control of your money is like becoming in control of anything else. It doesn't happen overnight. Um, it takes time, and it's a building process. And a lot of times it involves, that first step of looking in the mirror, being introspective. And being introspective is a really, really good thing. It's one of the best things in life, actually, because when you stop and you take the time to really look at yourself in the mirror and say, well, what am I doing that I could be doing differently? Um, you know, when you start asking yourself those questions, you take back your own personal control. And that goes for a lot of things. And one of those things would be your money. And your money ties into your future security and your stability. And by all means, I'm never saying, don't enjoy life, don't spend, don't become a miser. I'm not saying that. But making that a priority and realizing that you're in control, and that nest egg and that emergency fund is something that is going to really, serve you in the long run much better than any transitory, thing that you might be interested in purchasing today would do that. And my next commandment, I think we're on number 6 here, is build a strong relationship with a certified financial advisor or planner when you are ready. So like I alluded to earlier, a financial coach helps you get your personal relationship and behavior with your money in order. It helps you prioritize. A coach would help you prioritize and keep those behaviors in check, monitor them against an action plan, and change those behaviors as far as wants and needs and all that goes. And that's a great thing to maybe do at first, or sometimes in tandem with uh, going to a certified financial planner or advisor. A lot of times people work with the two simultaneously, and I can think of a lot of reasons that would be great. And I also can think of a lot of reasons why it would be great to go to a coach first, get your financial thinking straight first, and then go to the advisor or the planner to talk about the actual strategies and the what, and the how of the actual investing itself and putting that plan into action. Don't be afraid to look someone up. Don't be afraid to ask what their certifications are. Don't be afraid to get word of mouth recommendations. Those things are all really good as far as seeking the advice of a certified professional when you're ready to go there. And the next commandment is realizing that the earlier that you get mindful about your money, the better it is. When it comes to all of the elements that are on your side as far as building that future nest egg and a future security and stability surrounding money, time is the biggest element that's on your side, simply because of the rule of compounding in time and the progression of investments and stuff through time. Time actually, if you had to weigh time against your actual income, time is actually the bigger factor because it plays a bigger role in the growth of nest eggs. And there's studies out there and statistical analysis out there that shows that a person who makes a modest income, who gets started investing at a very young age can have much more than a person who has always made a very large income but doesn't get mindful about their money until they're maybe the late 40s or 50s. So getting mindful about your money at a younger age is always going to be the smartest thing you can do. So I want to always, gear this out there, not to say that everybody can't, learn from being more mindful about their money, but the earlier that you learn about your money and your relationship with your money and you get serious about it, the better, because time is of the essence when it comes to that. So, start thinking about that now versus later. And that's just one of those things that I should have made that commandment number one, actually, because that is really one of the most important ones. And also treating the management and thoughts of your money and losing the mindset that it's this taboo subject. You can't talk about being mindful of something without talking about how we're affected by the thoughts that society places on something. So it's part of being mindful is realizing that your thoughts are your own, but they're also influenced by what others around you think and tell you and share their opinion, whether it's welcome or not. But we do have this stigma in society where money is this taboo subject almost, I want to say. And people are afraid to talk about it. They're afraid to talk with their spouses about it. They're not comfortable talking to their employer about it. They're not comfortable talking to their friends about it. Think about the secrecy around money, and not saying it's a great idea to go out and tell all of your friends how much money you have and how much money you make, but by the same token, it shouldn't be this taboo subject that is so difficult to talk about. So breaking down those barriers, I always say that knowledge is power, and reading about stuff as much as you can really, really helps. And so, breaking down those barriers and not treating it like it's a taboo subject, because it shouldn't be. It's something that you should be able to freely converse about. And if you don't feel free to talk about it, you'd have to ask yourself, how honest are you going to be with someone like a financial coach? How honest are you going to be with someone like a financial advisor or a financial planner? Whoever you end up going to see to talk about your money. So it starts with that look in the mirror and being honest with yourself about it and your feelings about it and what it means to you. And I think to a large extent, that begins with taking the taboo out of the subject. So that would be commandment number 9, I believe. And then the 10th commandment is not allowing society or critics to stigmatize your money mindfulness as something bad. And what I mean by that is there is a stigma along with the taboo that I just talked about in the previous commandment. There is this stigma against people who are mindful about their money. I've experienced this personally, and it's sometimes overt, it sometimes is subtle. There is nothing wrong with being mindful about your money. It does not mean that you're a miser. Now, can somebody take it to the nth degree and go to that extreme and become a miser about it? Of course they can. And I believe that we talked about that in my first show with Deb Goldberg. And can that happen? Of course it can. but it doesn't have to. Having a healthy relationship with money doesn't means that you're neither a complete spendthrift with reckless abandon, and it also doesn't mean that you hoard it all and stash it in your pillowcase, for lack of a better word. I don't think people do that nowadays. They used to years ago, but anyway, um, but it means that that you're not a miser, that you don't allow people to treat you like there's something odd about you because you think in terms of your money and your stability and your future. And it's actually a very good thing. It's okay to be sensible. You know, there's almost this reverse logic out there that sometimes, I often wonder, that what seems like it's common sense is no longer considered common sense. It's almost like there's this thing in society where the lack of common sense is the good thing all of a sudden. And I want to say that, with so much in life, it's about balance. It's about balancing it out, not being a miser, not being a spendthrift, but finding that balance somewhere in between. But by all means, if you are smart with your money, don't allow somebody to stigmatize you with that, you know, and because in the long run, you'll have the last laugh. You really will, because you're the one that's being smart with it today. And other people, they may laugh at you, they may criticize you. Why do you drive that old car? But hey, what I'm doing with that car payment that you have is I'm investing it. I'm doing something with that car payment. I'm working with a financial advisor, and I'm making sure that that money is being put someplace. That's a smart thing. That's not a bad thing. Don't fall into that trap where somebody stigmatizes you as being too mindful about money, because it's okay to be somewhat mindful about it and keep it in perspective. A lot of these commandments, money commandments, they have to do with keeping it in that proper perspective. Um, and my last commandment, my 11th commandment, is that knowledge is power. We live in the information age. And so honestly, there's no excuse to not do your own research, because when you do talk to somebody, you want to know where you're coming from, and you want to make sure they know where you're coming from. And so one of the biggest things is that to come armed with that knowledge of, learn some basics about the stock market, learn some basics about, nest eggs, learn the difference between the different types of IRAs, the Roth IRAs and the regular IRAs. There's nothing stopping you from learning that. That stuff is all out on the web. You can find it from reliable sources, and read up on it and become knowledgeable about it, because knowledge is power when it comes to just about everything in life. And especially when it comes to your money, it really is power. So those are my 11 commandments. And that sets the stage for today's show, which is, what is mindfulness about money? And you can't talk about being mindful of your money without talking about also capturing or recapturing your personal power that you have with your money. And I want to say that having mindfulness about your money, it means that we think slowly, okay? And we don't make rash decisions with our money. It means that we talk with a trusted financial advisor who's certified, who comes highly recommended, who you've done your research on. It might mean maybe that we talk to a financial coach like myself to address those behaviors about money, a financial therapist, so to speak. I call myself, in a way, a financial therapist, because I love to talk about those behaviors that we have with our relationships with our money that are preventing us from getting on the track of having a savings plan, of having an investment plan, of having that knowledge about money, of deciphering between needs and wants. Those are all important discussions to be had. It also means changing how we view the money in the first place? You know, how do you view it? Do you give it more power than it actually has? Do you view it as something bad? Do you view it as something that's way too good? It all depends, you know, and the way you answer those questions is often going to be at the root of why you might have some of the behaviors and the decisions processes that you're following in your daily life. It's also realizing that it's not the one thing that's going to magically make you happy. That old saying that money doesn't make you happy is true, because you can have a ton of money and be a miserable person. You can not have money and be a very, very happy person. So that all has to do with keeping it in perspective and realizing it for what it is, that it's necessary for our lives, but it also adds to our peace of mind. I and no discussion on this would be complete without talking about historically, like, where does this come from? I happen to believe that it's very rooted in Judeo-Christian thinking and goes back thousands of years. And you can even find Aristotle um, is quoted as having said that, you know, money in and of itself is just bad. It's the root of all evil. And that the pursuit of money just for itself is just a bad thing, but that it is, its only value is toward an exchange, or toward the purchase of commodities. And while there's some truth to that, um, I would challenge if Aristotle lived in today's world, where, you know, healthcare is as expensive as it is, where getting older and living much longer than they did in those days is an issue. I kind of wonder if he would feel the same, you know, not to challenge, you know, one of the greatest philosophers of all times, but I would have to say that if he lived in today's world, would he say those exact same things? And would he feel exactly the same, or would he maybe change his opinion about it? I believe it was George Bernard Shaw who said that money is not the root of all evil, but it's the lack of money that is the root of all evil. So I can see some truth in that saying as well. I think I can see it from both sides, because it's that lack of money that can lead to that relentless pursuit of the profit motive, which can bring into account all sorts of negative behaviors and can lead you down a path of, you know, maybe making questionable decisions. So it's interesting how one famous person thought that money was the root of all evil, yet another very knowledgeable and smart guy. If you read some of George Bernard Shaw's quotes, they are brilliant. And it's funny how you could see it from both sides, that money can be the root of all evil, but that also the lack of money can lead you down that path as well. So I wanted to talk about the steps that we can take in our everyday to recapture that personal money power. And I've narrowed it down to six key steps that you can take starting today to recapture your personal power. Now, this has to do not so much with investing, because that's not my specialty. My specialty is the behaviors that get you on the path to being able to get there. So my thing would be, when it comes to purchases, when it comes to money decisions, number one, always ask a ton of questions. Don't be afraid to be perceived as annoying, because it's your money and you've worked very, very hard for it. So you don't need to let it go real easily. You don't need to let it just slide out of your hands because somebody is giving you a sales pitch. You need to evaluate what's in it for you and take that time to ask all those questions. It's your money, so ask away. You know, what, for instance, somebody is telling you that if you purchase whatever, this is going to save you blah, blah, blah in the long run. Okay, so ask the question. So exactly what am I spending now for this very same issue? And what exactly are those savings going to be in the future? What's it going to come to in a month, in a year? Are there really savings involved? Because sometimes it can just be a bill of goods that you're being sold, that this new thing is going to save you X amount of dollars. When in reality, when you stop and you ask the questions and you really analyze it, you're really not saving that money. And it actually, the disruption to your life by making that change could actually be more, could be a bigger hassle than the money that you're saving is making up for. So always be cognizant of that and don't be afraid to ask a lot of questions. I think a lot of times when it comes to that, we're afraid of being perceived as being annoying or asking too much and asking too many questions, and are we annoying that person? When in reality, it's your money and you have the right to know. So don't be afraid to ask, what is the real investment here going to involve? And what are the drawbacks? What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? Ask all those questions. Ask friends. Ask a trusted person that you know in that field or whatever. Is this really worth it? Whatever that may be. This could be anything under the sun. Number two, I would say, always do your own research. Get multiple opinions. Don't be afraid to research statistics. How have others fared when they've done this similar thing? Do you have a trusted friend or advisor that has been in a similar financial situation? And how did they fare? So that plays on the first rule of recapturing your personal power over money, and just goes a little bit further to say, do you have people that you trust their advice on who have had similar situations? Can they give you a word of mouth? Can they give you a recommendation? Always make the smartest decision, the most informed decision that you possibly can make, because the more you do that, the less regrets you'll have later. Knowledge is always power, and it feeds into every one of these commandments and every one of these action plans toward recapturing your personal money power. And the number 3 step to recapturing that personal money power is, don't only look at what's in it for you, but ask yourself, what is in it for the salesperson who is trying to sell you what it is they're asking you to buy? Always look at that conflict of interest. Always evaluate, okay, so they're telling me everything that's in it for me, but what's really in it for them at the end of the day? And, so is there more in it for them, or is there more in it for me? Because there's nothing wrong with a win-win, but if 90% of the win is yours as the seller and 10% of the win is mine as the buyer, you may want to reevaluate if that's the best purchase or the best thing to dig deeper into. And the number 4 step to recapturing your personal money power is take a deep breath. Yes, take a deep breath. Be mindful. How much of breathing is involved with mindfulness when it comes to meditation? So being mindful always involves taking a deep breath, taking a step back and reflecting, being introspective, and asking yourself, why am I being asked to make this rushed decision? Okay, so don't ever feel like you have to make a rushed decision on it when it comes to your money. Don't. If somebody tells you that you must act immediately, do more research, okay? Because if it's a good deal, it should be there for you next week. It should be there for you tomorrow. It should be there for you next month. I've very rarely in my life have I encountered that I had to make an instant decision or else, oh my God, I've blown everything. So that's more of a sales tactic than that is anything else in most cases. I'm not going to say in every case, because it's so hard to say that in every case that's the case. However, it very oftentimes proceed with caution. If somebody tells you, you must sign this right away, We need your decision right away. That's always a cautionary thing for me to do one of these. Okay, time for me to take a step back and rethink this. Not saying it's not going to happen, but I'm saying that maybe I just need to take a little bit more time, because for me personally, I know there's nothing worse than feeling pressure to sign on the dotted line for something or to sign up for something. And I always want to take that extra time to think about it. And I hate pressure tactics more than I hate anything in the world. Because if something is good and it's out there and it's legit, it'll be there next week. It'll be there tomorrow. It'll be there 3 hours from now. Okay, it won't disappear 20 seconds from now. That much you can pretty much bank on. Okay, so take that little bit of extra time. If it means talking it over with a trusted friend, talking it over with somebody whose financial input you trust, talking it over with your spouse, a parent, a trusted colleague, a coworker, a boss, or whatever, take that extra time. And if it's a legitimately great thing that you're signing up for, it'll be there. It'll be there 2 hours from now, 4 hours from now, tomorrow. So just keep that in mind. That was commandment number, not commandment, personal power tool number 4. I'll say that one. Personal money power tools. Yeah, I better trademark that actually. Also, learn to prioritize. Putting a percentage of your money away for the future should be just as important as taking a vacation or getting that new outfit or that new piece of jewelry. Reprioritize it so that it benefits you in the long run. Realize that that short-term feeling of satisfaction by buying that piece of jewelry, by buying that $200 shirt or whatever, or blouse, or that brand new kitchen gadget that you absolutely must have, doesn't always feel as good in the long run as that nest egg or that emergency fund will feel someday. What was the old, I love to always quote old sayings because I think there's so much wisdom in those old sayings, like that old adage that nothing tastes as good as thin feels. There's a lot of truth in that. What it talks to mostly, what that saying talks to is instant gratification. That the instant gratification is not as valuable as the long-term benefit and the good feeling you're going to feel by having that long-term benefit. So I would say reprioritize, talk to a coach or go right to an advisor or a planner or do it yourself and come up with a strategy where you really evaluate. And it goes back to the introspection. It goes back to looking in the mirror and saying, are there things that I'm spending money on that really don't need it? I'm telling myself I need it, but I don't need it. Do I need a 2019 vehicle, or is my 2014 vehicle still driving just fine? Little things like that. And are there things that I could do with that money, that I'm just using it for today? So it's about making the financial future plan a bigger priority in your life. And it doesn't mean not enjoying life today, but maybe it means questioning why that thing in your life is what you're equating with enjoyment. It could mean that. It could mean that requires some deep digging psychologically sometimes to think about. And we've all been there. There's no judgment in any of this. We've all been there, and it's why I can talk to this like the back of my hand, because we've all been there, where we've gone to the mall and we've blown $500 in 10 minutes. We've all been there, or we've charged it and we didn't worry about it until we got the bill. So, none of this is meant to ever be judgmental. It's all about trust me, I've lived it, I've done it, I've learned from it, and I want to pass it on because it's my passion today to try and pass that on to you and help other people. If I can stop one person from not making the same mistake that I might have made, I think that my job is accomplished. So that brings me to my last one, which is being introspective. I think I touched on this throughout the commandments and throughout these steps, but it's not always easy to look in the mirror, but it's necessary sometimes. If you make $150,000 a year, but you spend $200,000 a year, you need to ask yourself why. Because the truth is that in the long run, you might have had a great salary and you might have had years making that great salary. But if you made that great salary for 30 years, 40 years, and you didn't put very much of it, if any of it, away, and you lived for only for the moment, you have to ask yourself why. You know, I get it that I get it, I get the mindset of where it comes from, that we have to enjoy and live in the present moment. But that's never meant to be interpreted as a mutually exclusive statement, where living in the present moment means we completely disregard the future. We're supposed to learn from our past. We're supposed to live in the present, but we're supposed to be mindful about our future. So having those in that proper perspective is where that financial planning, that security, that stability comes into play. And so much of that has to do with asking yourself those honest questions. You know, why do I have this great salary for 10 years, but I have nothing to show for it except a depreciating car? Maybe I'm still renting. I haven't put a down payment on a house or a condo. I don't have any type of a growing asset type of an investment or anything like that. And not to say that any of this is your definite specific financial plan you should have, but there has to be something more to the plan than just that live in the moment. And I want to make sure that my status that I have is seen by the world. But the truth is, your status is also seen by how much of a nest egg you've put away. It's also seen by that. It's also seen by your ability to one day retire securely and happily and be able to enjoy life somewhat. So that's also an indicator of your status. And so let's not lose sight of that. Can you, for instance, pay off your car sooner and do something with that saved money? Those are all the questions that you could ask yourself. Can you possibly make an extra mortgage payment per year? And since you've already taken into account that mortgage money, is there an investment that you could make with that mortgage money that you've paid off? Or could you put it into an emergency fund? I think that we've all learned in 2020, I know I sure have, is the importance of having a rainy day fund and having that emergency fund. So are there better choices that you can make? Because remember, so much of life really is the choices that we make. And you want to always try to make those choices, be as educated and as knowledgeable as possible. And if you can reduce some of your expenses, you know, that money that you're saving, it makes more sense for your future than the things that are transitory, that are temporary in nature. Because what all of this really boils down to is comfort, security, stability. None of those things are going to feel as good in the long run as that stability, as that security is going to feel. And that's what being mindful about your money actually means. It means that realization that you control a lot of this. You really do, whether it be the income portion or the expense portion. You have more control than you think. And I'm not saying that everything is controllable. There are always going to be outside variables that we can't control. And figuring out, though, what's that serenity prayer? You know, figuring out what we can control, that can be the key to being mindful about our money and getting where we want to get in life. And so with that, I hope you have found today's show enlightening and informative about your relationships with your money. And I look forward to seeing you here on the Enlightened World Network and the Enlightened Living channel. I'm on every 2 Wednesdays at 12 o'clock noon Eastern Time. And I hope you've enjoyed today's show. And I look forward to seeing you again 2 weeks from now. Thank you very much for joining, and have a great rest of your day, and be mindful about money. Bye-bye.